a toast to freedom. God bless. We will move forward with the second part of our presentation, and we will consider that the value of things. At the market indeed will go by the use of those things. In general, it's like this. And we had some abandoned things, and as I told you, I sometimes like to get this thing and take a look. And we did the optimization of COBOL by this, observing that on 50 things kind of had separated only by a binary taxonomy, very pure. But will be something naive considering this on present time by the board, which we could observe and prove that has deeper levels of association affecting your moral conviction and deforming intent as your will to do not apply the law properly, protect your criminal groups or scams and take advantage by these, even if these do not flow by yourself, by using your relatives or the social circles and things like this. We had one global company named IBM. The international business machine is 100% business, an American company. Must be led, guided, and protected by the American people. This company should consider have, as other companies in strategic areas of United States, members of state, to have the reciprocity as control by open door and closed doors about failures at the state by the use or misuse of state power, of the use of this company in a global environment to support the pandemic crime. With events on 2028 America, we are acting by the preventive control against crime that comes since 1988, evidenced in the report in 2022 from Public Budget Brazil. The interconnections inside my department, as you can observe, my company had department A, B, and C, like finances, business, and marketing. And the offices in each one have chairs inside. The relational association by departments brings the chairs. I can use the relational database to get each one of those small operations inside the department, and having a storage as a level of intelligence in each one of those departments that belongs to the office. In the same way, by the smart, which allowed it's something available, you have at this company, you have in America, it's American product, an American portfolio, an American self-defense of American industry. And then we will check that this can go by the association as department like finance that must control the money, business that must do the money, the business avoiding loss, it means acting all legal, in the market that kind of will use the creativity to achieve new levels of sense, perceptions, and segment the market, like the Professor Kotler told. The relation as side-to-side department can be made by the deep blue because allowed you to have the prediction of movement inside one situation that you kind of have the control by the SWOT analysis inside your company. The control belongs to your company, since you respect your statement according with the Constitution as American Constitution, because it's an American business. The CAO, the leader, must be an American. The top chair, the critical area must be ruled by the American interest, purpose, and respect the legal system and judicial power in America, since they have this kind of sense as perception exposed to the company as international business in the same way to the globe, that they have the integrity to present their obligations and requests, claim and do the orders by the law and the values that they believe, which indeed will form the American society, state, government and corporative areas. Some areas have failure, some areas had the evaluation as values, that any regular person or people or company or group will consider repulsive. And this, the deep blue allowed us to get this, the storage of data compiled as movement, which can be presented by a complex level as cognitive named Watson. The interconnection we can consider another American company that goes more than 1 century. It's the American Telephone and Telegraph and Telephone that do on present time this kind of interconnection of things, considering the business and the international business that operate or had been operated by a new value as codified argument and elements by binary taxonomy with a redistribution that allowed you at the chair inside the Homeland Defense and State Department or even the CIA to trace, track, and for sure cluster the problems by values inside, not considering gender, nationality, creed, or any argument that had been used as a speech of vulnerability to do not apply the law, to do not suffer legal consequence, and in many cases having the continuity of all crimes that had been complained by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, considering the white-collar crime, the corruption, the public corruption, the transnational organized crime, the steal of economic values from America, which implies the decreasement of opportunity and space in the future. And other elements, in the same way, equally complained by the OECD, by the IMF, by the UNODC, and in the Interpol. In general, we will have in mind that the criminal groups are pretty much the same, especially when they got chairs at the state and are explicit on present time at this pandemic event by the misusage of those chairs. In general, as I told you, I'm not concerned with the Brazil as Brazil itself. Indeed, it's something that I do not get along with the values presented by this conjuncture. And I will consider that a regular conjuncture as global system is like this. But we had failures and huge failures at the pandemic event that can't be denied. And the pandemic event before as multiple events as global, which implies the FIFA Games and the Olympics, brings ourselves to this kind of picture, which is not a flawless square. And we will observe that the Brazil indeed is a criminal conjuncture by the purpose, by the things observed, by the facts that are notorious and you can deny. And this conjuncture will be related from the deep inside of our global conjuncture. And since we got reported 1,000 times during this pandemic event as COVID-19, these kind of failures, and the criminal groups are pretty much the same inside the public budget Brazil, that comes since 1988 until 2022. Indeed, we will have all segmentation that you need by this judicial power, and in a very first moment considering the two embassies that are having the analysis of values compliant by myself, that I do not get along, and it's the reason to cut maybe, or at least have the observation if it's possible, to do not get and be related anymore by soil and blood with this kind of country that has as national purpose keep illicit advantage all things that are complained by we all, because indeed threats we all. And we will check that if you have the situation as something like this, considering that let's suppose that I have this model here as my effort, and my effort will be offered maybe by the email account to the Federal Bureau of Investigation about all things observed from Brazil in global scale by the association. And we are having the segment alpha as maybe the common purpose between the offer, it implies the supply, and the need as their demand. And for instance, did you have this speech before by the Minister of Justice in Brazil, by the entire Supreme Court, or the entire judicial power, the Congress, the governments, or any Brazilian company? I bet you don't. And you didn't for sure. Why they didn't have a word, especially if you have this security for it. And in the same way, when you act by violations of all things trying to train the perception of this research which was offered, and in a very specific moment you do the aggression against the Microsoft system as industrial element of their portfolio as a full service company, or the Google as the Android, in the same way as their industrial portfolio and full service company, they will be equally crossed by the interest as beta in charge and request this information. And now, Brazil, an offender segmented on body, you will be terrified and shake your pain a bit more. Because we will have something like this: the alpha, the beta, as our interest hurted by your strike violating, for instance, the email account. And their interest, for instance, when you violated their industrial portfolio. And you do this, you sometimes try to steal industrial secrets, core business. And as I told you, the limit to complain and request our ambition as alpha is 33 trillion, 0 up to 33 trillion since 1988, and so their interest beta. You are having a double research of your famous criminal offender as a system. We will finish our second presentation here and move forward. Have a good night.